All right, guys, there is an enormous amount of elk hunting content out there. And if you're a newer elk hunter, it is a challenge just to get through that. What's important and what's not. I've got 200 or 300 videos on all sorts of different topics out there, and I realize you might not have time to go through all of that. Sure, as an experienced guide, I think all of it's important, but up until now, I really didn't have a feel for what people were getting the most value out of. What I did was I reached out to 1,500 of my viewers, and these are folks that have hunted elk for 1 season up to 6 or 7 seasons. I asked them a simple question. What did you wish you knew when you started that you know now? What's the low-hanging fruit that has made you a better hunter? This is the stuff that moved the needle for an enormous group of guys. So without further ado, let's dive right into it. So the first one is painfully obvious, but a lot of us fall for it, even experienced hunters. The concept of elk being where they're at, and you have to be there. Right? You can't be in the other 90% of habitat that doesn't have any game in it. This holds very true, particularly for hard pressured elk, right? Elk in over-the-counter areas, public land, easy to draw tags. The elk are going to be concentrated in a very small segment of that habitat. Part of it's biological, part of it's pressure, but it's just the reality. So you have to be in that zone. And unfortunately, there's guys that spend 2, 3, 4 years figuring this out. It's really obvious. So why are they doing it? The reason they're doing it is due to some cognitive biases that we just have as humans. The biggest one is the sunk cost bias, right? And it's good for you to understand this because you can avoid it if you see this when it happens to you, right? So what you're doing is you're spending a lot of time e-scouting, right? And a great quote actually from the group is from James. He says, "You can't e-scout hard enough to make elk appear in a spot." So what happens is you e-scout a ton, you spend a ton of effort on that, and then to add on to that, you figure out your logistics to get into that spot, you start hunting there, and you spend some prime hours glassing, right? And then you spend some middays looking for sign. You don't glass any animals up, you see no fresh sign, but you keep hunting there because of the sunk cost fallacy. You can't be wrong because you've spent so much time and effort figuring it out. Hunters fall to this big time, and if they don't get lucky right off the bat and end up in that small segment of habitat that's holding the game, they'll waste an enormous amount of time because they cannot believe that all that effort has been fruitless. Over time, you'll have the advantage, right? Because you'll know these spots over the years. Under these conditions, under those conditions, I talk about this a bunch in my other videos. You'll figure out where those good spots are. But when you're starting, you got to get in the mindset like, hey, they're not here. I gave it a good effort. Mix it up. Don't get caught assuming that that effort you spent to figure out that spot has to result in elk being there. Some action steps straight from the survey so you can solve this one. Boots on the ground scouting beats over-reliance on e-scouting. Great one from Matt R. Wasting time in low-density areas is a rookie mistake. Great one from James. Prioritizing fresh sign, tracks, droppings, bed areas, not just good-looking terrain. Nailed it. E-scouting is a tool, but boots on the ground is how you confirm what's actually going on in a unit. Over time, this all goes away because you'll end up with a catalog of spots, but you have to spend time figuring out those spots where the elk are at. Great stuff. You want more on this topic from me? Check out this interview right here I did with Evan, an experienced elk hunting guide, and he talks about this a ton, how he screens through spots and narrows down the country where the elk actually are. All right, guys, my Spring Bear online course is up on the website at pursuitwithcliff.com/Spring Bear. I've taken all of my knowledge, everything I've learned on over 50 successful spring bear hunts across the states and across Canada. All of that I've shoved into this course. Right now, there's already 6 or 7 hours up, and I'm going to continually improve this course. Once you sign up, you'll have access forever. All of the information and the full course will be complete by the first week of April. There's a ton of knowledge, a ton of tactics, a ton of gear talk that's going to help anybody who's preparing for a spring hunt. Go check it out. All right, so the next one, I'm just going to start with some quotes. Hunting with a bad wind is just wasted energy. That's from David S. Coming from a flatter state, I didn't get thermals at first. They matter way more than you'd think. Jacob P. If the wind isn't in your favor, don't even bother. Harold. All right, guys. This one is coming down to the realization that you can't get away with it. With elk that get the crap hunted out of them, you are not going to beat the wind. You can beat all the other stuff. You can get second chances with noise. You can get second chances even if you get seen. But with the wind, you're pretty much screwed if they get your scent. So you have to be super cognizant. I think there's some analogies for some of the whitetail hunters, but I think for folks that are focused on other species or species that just don't get the type of pressure that these elk get, they don't understand. This is a non-debatable one, right? You can't do anything with elk unless you factor in the wind. That's stalks, that's where you're glassing, where you're putting your camp, all of that stuff matters in a huge way. So action steps on this is just do a little research. Figure out exactly how thermals operate in the mountains. They're pretty consistent in most of the areas that a lot of you guys are hunting in all the western states, and you can actually use them to your advantage, not to your detriment. Know how they change throughout the day, and then also just get in the mode. Make it a check step on your stalking checklist, on your where I'm gonna camp checklist, where I'm gonna glass checklist. Wind is super relevant. All the guys that kill a shitload of elk, this is on their mind all of the time. And yes, I do have a video on it. It's a little bit old school. It's been a while. I'll stick a link up right here. All right, guys, this next one, all I can say is it embarrasses me that I haven't done specific content on it, and I've only alluded to it very minimally over the years. It came up a bunch in the survey, and that's that you need to be prepared to take advantage of those really quick opportunities. We're talking opportunities to shoot an elk where you've got 3 to 10 seconds to make that shot. This could be on the archery front. That bull comes in, he comes in to 40 yards, but he only stops broadside right there for 3 seconds. Why aren't you letting that arrow go? A bull jumps up in the timber as you're walking back to camp with your rifle. It's at 80 yards, why don't you shoot it? This popped up a ton when I was guiding, and I can't really pinpoint why I specifically haven't made content on it until now. I think a big part of it is a bias that I have, and I'm sure you guys share. And this is the concept of, I think it's Maslow's hammer? Maslow's hammer. So Maslow's hammer is the idea in the bias that we take the equipment we have, the skill set we've perfected, and we assume that every opportunity out there is going to take advantage of that, right? So nowadays, what are the big pushes out there in the market? Long-range archery shooting, long-range rifle shooting, all the different rests we can use, all the different things we can do to get ready for the perfect shot opportunity. But you don't see very much content on taking snapshots. How do I use a sling to take that offhand shot? There's very little of that in the hunting world, but it's super important. And I'm telling you, I got like 50, 60 responses on this survey that were based on that. Like, hey, I missed opportunities that now I know would have resulted in a dead bull. So what are the action steps that we can take here? One, you can just train it. Just focus on these short range opportunities, archery or rifle, where you can take that opportunity and you can ethically harvest an animal within those short ranges in a 2-3 second period. You just have to practice those and see how effective you are, and it's pretty easy. You're gonna get results. The next time a bull stands up in the timber, you've got your rifle, you're gonna be able to use that sling, and yes, it's not gonna be the most solid position in your shooting world, right? But the crosshairs are not gonna leave the vitals. You're gonna squeeze off that round and boom, dead bull, right? So you need to practice that stuff. Dry firing the positions is a great way to do it, obviously in the rifle context, not in the archery context, but in the archery context, you can shoot from weird positions, right? You can shoot with a torqued body. You can shoot from the basically kneeling position, right? Because that's where you're gonna get these really quick opportunities. Just do that in your backyard. Instead of always shooting at 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 yards to maximize range, get that target in there at 20 and see how weird you can get with those shots and how awkward you can get with those shots and still be effective. And then you'll know out in the field what you can do with these little short opportunities. It only takes 3 to 5 seconds for it all to be over, an opportunity that you've backpacked 8 days for. Great quote from Vince. Always have your rifle and bow in a ready shooting position when you're moving through thick cover that has sign in it. Great one from Ryan. All good stuff, guys. In the future, I will do some content on this one. All right, so this next one is a good one, and it's one that, again, I personally battle with to this day. I'll introduce it with a quote from Gary. Weak-willed me, what do I do if I see a bull? Strong-willed me, go kill him. Another quote, do whatever possible to kill the animals you spot today. These opportunities rarely come twice. Good one from Travis. Hesitation costs more tags than bad shots. Don't overanalyze it. Great one from Charles. So what everybody's getting at here is, look, you're going to have these opportunities, and there does tend to be, and I'm pretty damn sure it's statistically significant from what I've seen, there tends to be a tendency for folks that are new to elk hunting to be cautious when they're making the go or no-go call. Right? So a good example of this is, hey, do we have time to get to that bull, right? We only have an hour and a half until it's dark. Can we get there in an hour and a half? Overall, you're better off giving it a try. Yes, there's always going to be circumstances where the logical decision might be to wait till tomorrow morning. But I'm telling you, and for sure this came out in the survey, there's an over hesitation to take opportunities when you get them. This is particularly reflective on opportunities on public land, heavily pressured elk. This gets a little distorted because a lot of the media out there around elk hunting, it's not in that environment. It's in a totally different environment where waiting doesn't have the same consequences. There's not the same risk trade-off there, right? So, in general, early on, push yourself to take advantage of those opportunities. Another bonus of this is encompassed in a great quote from the survey. More failed attempts equals more learning. Guys, biltong, okay? I have been obsessed with this stuff for 3 or 4 years. Ever since I got on a keto, carnivore, paleo-esque type of diet, I've had a hard time finding healthy snacks. Biltong is a great option, particularly the slabs that have this fat on the side. That's where your energy is if you're a fat burner like me. Super simple ingredients in this, guys. Literally 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ingredients. Compare that to your gas station jerky. A great snack in the backcountry or just day to day. Biltong Depot is a huge supporter of my content. Go to their website, biltongdepot.com. Use my discount code CLIFFG, CLIFFG for 15% off at checkout and to support this content. Thanks, guys. All right, guys, this one, I'm going to be honest with you, it didn't come up a ton in the survey, but it came up enough for me to justify it because it's one that personally rings a bell with me, and I think it's really important for folks to know, particularly newer guys. I'm going to go with the Bible quote here. I'm not an overly religious guy, but I think this quote from Paul will encompass the idea. Each one should test their own actions. Then they can take pride in themselves alone without comparing themselves to someone else. For each one should carry their own load. In this hunting endeavor, particularly elk hunting, comparison is the thief of joy and it is the thief of progress. Right now, social media has elk hunting so distorted into some alternative reality. I'm going to tell you straight up right now so you know. This is a statistical fact. The number one variable to kill bulls and big bulls is access. A lot of times that has to do with money. A lot of times it has to do with luck when you're drawing tags, okay? But when you see big bulls and you see a lot of success on social media, you have to realize that that is the factor that outweighs everything else. All hundreds of the videos that I have on my channel, you can watch those 1,000 times and then go elk hunting 1,000 times. You're still going to be battling with that variable in terms of which one matters more, okay? It's extreme. When people tell you that a big old bull in, XYZ area is super, super smart because he's a 400-inch bull, and they're trying to equate that to that being the smartest bull on earth, I promise you there's 300-inch bulls in some wilderness area that gets the shit hunted out of it that are way, way smarter. So I want to point that out, not to, disparage anybody or anything like that, but I want you to understand that because if you get into this world of comparison, it will not do you any favors and it is going to take away from the hunting experience. Last thing I'll say on this is Just because somebody draws really good tags, just because somebody has a shitload of money and hunts awesome places, that also doesn't mean that they're a bad hunter, right? I'm just telling you there's very little correlation between pictures of giant bulls, success with giant bulls, and the actual skill set in getting good at executing these hunts. That is a fact. And if you disagree, or you've been on here this far, you probably have some thoughts and opinions. And if you've got another one you want to add to this, right? Have you been hunting for 4 or 5 years and there's a low-hanging fruit out there that I haven't hit? Put it in the comments so we can all learn from it. There's a vast amount of knowledge in the viewers of this channel. So what is your thoughts on what I just said? And also, what are your thoughts on low-hanging fruit for a new elk hunter, a guy who's been hunting 1 or 2 seasons? How can he get up the learning curve? Tell us about it. All right, this one, I've got dozens of videos on, right? Or at least I talk about it in dozens of videos, and that's that mental preparation and physical preparation matters. Overall, you're probably gonna overestimate this, and you guys are also very busy, so even if you don't overestimate it, it's still gonna be an obstacle for you. I've got a great video, I'll stick it up right here on why hunters quit. There's some good stuff in there that if you hear about it, I think you can relate to it and it can push you through. Let's read some quotes from the audience because I think there's some good ones here. You don't understand how much conditioning matters until you hunt the mountains a few years. Great one from Russell. Hunting at 10,000 feet is different. Train with weight, hike hills, stay fueled. Awesome one from Curtis. Weak knees equals no bull. Get in shape and practice awkward shooting positions from Gary. You don't know what it's like until you hunt the mountains for multiple years. Stay positive. Hunting is mentally tougher than most people realize. All right, so let's get real on this for a moment, all right? All of this stuff doesn't apply to all hunting. It applies to the subset of hunting that we're talking about, right? Wilderness, mountains, elk that get the crap hunted out of them. These hunts overall are not, in the moment, I think most people would say they're not really fun. They're a challenge. Yes, there's fun parts. You can be with good people and you can enjoy that time together. They're in beautiful landscapes. Like, those are obviously pluses and they're fun, when you look at them at a certain angle. And they're always really fun as memories. But the actual hunt, it's more of a challenge than it is fun. This type of hunting is fairly unique in that way. A lot of the other hunts that I do in my life, it's not like that. I think that's where this difference comes into play, and I think that's why it gets mentioned so many times in this survey. This is not from guys that are necessarily brand new hunters altogether. It's guys that have done a lot of hunting in a lot of different places, and they're like, hey, this type of hunting, it's easy to underestimate how physically prepared you need to be and also how mentally prepared you're gonna be. It has a massive statistical input into if you're gonna be successful or not. Check out that video, I'm telling you. As a guide, it took me freaking years to figure this out, but it's almost the #1 factor, right? If you don't stay the whole duration of your hunt, mathematically your chances of killing something goes down like exponentially, right? So it's a huge one. The quotes on this are guys just trying to be nice, right? Be intimately familiar with your gear. It makes everything easier. Corey. Break in boots, test your pack, practice shooting in real conditions. Nick. Good game bags happen to be a must. Tim, being intimately familiar with your gear is not an option. He actually used intimately the same way that Corey did. So anyways, guys, this one is one I do talk about a fair amount, and it is a function of the marketing funnel or, tornado, let's call it, that we're all in the elk hunting world. There's awesome shit out there. There's awesome innovation out there. I don't disagree with that. But there is a cost to constantly changing gear, and there is a cost to never getting your gear dialed in as a system. Once you use that gear in the field, you've used it for a few reps, you are quick with it, right? You have no anxiety about it. You don't have to fiddle around with it. All of that makes the hunt easier, and it allows you to focus on the things that actually matter, and making it possible for you to leverage your gear and the system you have around your gear to your advantage. If you keep changing gear all the time, or if you just make a hobby out of buying shit and then you never actually prep with it and use it before you go hunting, all you're gonna do in the hunting scenario is be a gear tester, right? I fall into this like as an influencer or whatever because I get a lot of new gear, right? And I, just like everybody else, I want to test out the new shit. I want to see the new shit. And then I kind of have a bit of a job obligation to check it out for you guys, right? But when I have a bunch of new gear that I bring with me on a hunt, the whole hunt sometimes feels like all I'm doing is testing gear and not hunting. That can be problematic. Test it, use it, iterate on it, make your system better. Sure, have fun looking at gear, but always consider this trade-off. You don't need the best gear. If all you've got is thrift store camping gear, just go hunt. Great quote from Joe. Thanks, man. Always have plan B, C, D, E, F. If your spot is crowded, move fast. If somebody's at your glassing spot, move fast. If there's nowhere to park, move fast. Great quote. Now, I do have to admit, I think you might have stole part of that from my video, and it's right here. Why 5% of hunters kill 95% of the bulls. I talk about this concept. You've got to have a stack of backup plans, right? When you're first starting, the reality is a lot of those backup plans are just speculation, right? You don't know which ones are good, which ones are bad. But once you start hunting an area, and hopefully you can hunt the same unit or a region of units year after year, you're going to get a catalog of spots where it's very easy to put in a bunch of plans that are A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and so on. So if something comes up, it could be these things that are really pressure related. I think you can kind of overemphasize those a little bit too much sometimes too, but could be pressure, could just be no animals, could be a bunch of different factors, could be snow level, could be conditions getting around roads or whatever. You want to have other plans and be adaptable, and you will still kill elk when nobody else is. This has been fun. I have learned a ton from doing this, just reaching out to folks and getting their opinion on what really matters. It's actually changed my perspective on a bunch of things, and I think I've learned a lot about it, and I'm going to integrate it into a bunch of my future content. But guys, these two videos with Eric and Tim, awesome interviews with newer elk hunters that went out, did their first elk hunt. We debriefed them, tons of good stuff in there. I got a ton out of it. I'm sure you will too. I'll catch you guys later.